everyone. Welcome to the KMI webinar series. My name is Dr. Jung-Ho Seo, Visiting Assistant Professor of Management and Tourism Studies at the George Washington University School of Business. I'm thrilled to announce that KMI is relaunching our signature webinar series starting from today, starting from March 2021. This webinar is the first of many upcoming learning and networking events through KMI's initiatives. Today, as announced, let me share the screen quickly. I'm sharing the screen right now. Okay, good, right. Today, we will talk about online business model, online travel agencies business model and its impact on the travel industry in South Korea. Ms. Jihyun Hong is our keynote speaker today. She is a specialist in OTA strategy. I will introduce her background more in detail very soon. Before we are moving on to that, I'd like to thank to KMI's affiliated organizations who have supported us all the way so far. Okay, sorry. Right. First, GWSB. The Korean Management Institute, KMI, is under the umbrella of the George Washington University School of Business. We are located in Washington, D.C. KMI brings together a wide range of business people, policymakers, researchers, government experts, students, and others who have an interest in U.S. South Korea business relations through the GWSB's global network. Without the School of Business support, we couldn't host this webinar. Thank you very much. I myself am a professor of management. I'm a professor of the Department of Management. The Department of Management hosts the KMI to let us contribute to the research and teaching mission of the George Washington University School of Business. Without the supports from my colleagues and my chairs at the department, KMI couldn't relaunch and promote our webinar series. Thank you very much. We are offering internationally renowned degree programs and graduate certificates. For more information, please visit our website. IITS, the International Institute of Tourism Studies at the GW School of Business, is also a crucial partner and supporter of KMI. For more than 30 years, IITS has been a global leader in tourism education and research. As a research team member at IITS myself, I'm so glad to share our mission with you. We are putting tourism on a path to social good, protecting places, creating opportunities, and increasing livelihoods in low-income communities. For our prospective students who will apply for our graduate programs at the Department of Management, you will have so many opportunities to have work experience and build your network through IITS projects. Last but not least, as a professor of management and tourism studies, I am proud to introduce you to the GW Master of Tourism Administration program. I cannot wait to see my prospective students who just got admitted to the MTA program in the following semesters. If you have any questions about the application and admission processes, feel free to contact us. And to learn more about our program, please visit our website. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker today, Ms. Jihyun Hong. Ms. Jihyun Hong, Wharton MBA, is a supply optimization and commercialization manager at Agoda, one of the world's fastest growing online travel booking platforms under the Booking Holdings umbrella. She develops and executes strategic roadmap for chain hotel supply booking growth by identifying opportunities across organization, including account management practices, pricing, and marketing. Previously, Jihyun was partnerships innovation manager at Agoda. She was in charge of sales process improvement for the strategic partnerships team. Prior to that, she was sales executive at Hilton Worldwide, Conrad Seoul, South Korea. Jihyun earned her MBA at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. She also completed BBA in Hotel Management at Kyunghee University, Seoul, South Korea. Please welcome Jihyun. Jihyun, would you like to say hello to our audience? Right?
Yes, it's a really an honor to be here today. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope I can really be helpful in kind of sharing what I've learned throughout my experience. And I hope this is also a helpful time for you.
Thank you very much for your time, and we are so privileged to have you. So here's the outline of today's session. We will explore to sketch out the following topics: OTA supply landscape to experimentation in business settings. Before we have Jihyun, let me briefly give you a background of OTA business and industry. OTA business at a glance. You might be very familiar with those logos and brands of OTA companies, OTAs, right? The online travel websites, online travel platforms comprised primarily travel e-commerce and review sites. The travel e-commerce sites allowed customers or users to purchase travel products and services such as booking hotels, right? Experiences like buying tickets for local theaters or musical performances, right? Flight tickets, restaurant reservations, and rental cars, either directly through a travel company's websites, like you are purchasing a ticket through Delta Airlines website, their own website, or through an OTA acting as an intermediary. So there are two ways you can book your flights, for example, through the airline's website directly or using an intermediary like Agoda, TripAdvisor, or Expedia, right? OTAs had contracts, agreements with hotels, restaurants, tourist attractions, museums, and other suppliers of travel products and services to buy some of their inventory, and then allowed customers / travelers in this context to book those products and services on their website or through mobile applications. Travel review sites, online travel review sites, such as TripAdvisor, allowed users, internet users, travelers, customers to share, post, exchange their experience with travel products, travel experiences, travel services. For example, by rating a restaurant, a hotel stay, and often companies like TripAdvisor or other OTAs running online reviews could generate revenue through click-through advertisements on their websites, right? Travelers worldwide were increasingly depending on travel review sites when they are planning their travels. So that's the context. So this figure shows the trend in the OTA business. Based on this compound annual growth rate, CAGR, we can see over a decade, the travel market has been shifting online. Okay? Can you see the growth rate and see these bar charts as well? Right? I'm adopting this figure from TripAdvisor's event presentation. And this figure shows the competition in the OTA business and industry. So this shows the deduplicated unique monthly users for each travel sites. Okay, and you can see the leading companies here, TripAdvisor and Booking Holdings. Booking.com are the two leading companies. And you can also see Airbnb here, right? In 2019, global OTA agencies generated approximately 744 billion US dollars. And because of COVID, it has been decreased to 595.8 billion dollars billion US dollars in 2020. But still, you can see the uptick trending, the growth rate from 2015 to 2019. The compound annual growth rate was 7.9%. It's quite strong number, okay, when it comes to the growth rate. Taking the case of TripAdvisor once again, in the left section, you can see their KPIs, key performance indicators, and on the right section, right column over here, you can see their areas of business, significant supply footprint across the spectrum of travel products and services, accommodations, experiences, dining, restaurants, airline ticket, flight tickets, and cruises. Right? You can get the idea of the areas of businesses for OTAs from the case of TripAdvisor. Business model, how it works. So, general traveler will take the following 5 steps. So they will gather information before purchasing travel products and services, and go to the websites to search, research, and plan their trips, and then compare different prices for the travel products and services that they're looking for, and book their travel and visit the destination and experience local culture and do their business at the destination, right? And then recall their travel when they go back to their home and share, post, and exchange ideas about their travel experiences from their recent travel, right? That's the process. And OTAs are playing a crucial role in each stage for travelers' planning and purchasing behavior. Right? And the areas of businesses for the OTAs, multiple areas, diverse areas related to the travel industry, hotels, accommodation, and experiences, dining, all the foodie culture stimulated the popularity and the importance of booking tables for the OTA business recently. So these are the business areas that you can consider as an OTA company. So quick overview of the OTA business in South Korea. Okay, you can see the market size, market value. OTA's market value in South Korea in 2020 is approximately $20 billion US dollars, and you can compare it with the previous number, like the total market in the world, total market's share worldwide is approximately $600 billion, right? And total amount of OTA business transaction in South Korea in 2019 is approximately $10 billion. And the OTA's market share out of the total online transactions in South Korea is approximately 20%. So these are the background that I can share. So let's hear from our keynote speaker from here to talk about the main topics for today's session. Jihyun, back to you.
Awesome. So before I jump in, maybe it'll be good for me to kind of quickly kind of recap my background. So as Chungho said, I am currently working at Agoda, and I'm working in supply strategy. And my main focus is around what we call key accounts, and that's global hotel chains. I just kind of want to cover as the topics that I will cover today. I would like to talk about the hotel supply landscape in the OTA industry, and also kind of talk about how it kind of relates to global hotel chains, because I know GWU is also very close to some of the HQs for the largest hotel chains. Hilton is right next door, Marriott is right next door, Choice is also very close by. So I think these are some topics that could also be interesting for you. And then lastly, what's different with OTAs versus the traditional traveler businesses is the strength of data and experimentation. So I also want to touch on that. So going back, let me start off by talking about the OTA supply landscape. So OTAs, as Jungho was mentioning earlier, if you can go to the next slide, Jungho. So there's OTAs are now offering a lot of different services. Sometimes in the past, it used to be just accommodation or accommodation and flights, and more it's turning into a platform. So now they're selling experiences and restaurants, rental cars and whatnot. So I want to, for now though, focus on accommodation, and accommodation is very important to the OTA business, because the other things that you see here is actually pretty low margin, especially for flights. It's notoriously low margin. So OTAs like Expedia, Booking.com, they all make money by making commission through accommodation sales, not flight sales. So let me talk about accommodation and what the supply landscape looks like. So when you think about an OTA, you might think about, okay, so where do these hotels come from? Then you might just think about, okay, so they have direct contracts with these hotels, and that's how they have all of these hotel inventories on their websites. But that's actually just a small part of their supply landscape. If you can go to the next slide. Um, so this is kind of a diagram that I found that's representative of the supply landscape right now. What I mentioned was the portion on the right side. So hotels supplying directly to contracted OTAs. But on top of that, what's happening is there are many different kind of supply landscapes happening here. And what's important to kind of understand, so before I could go into the importance of what's happening is what you see here is so hotels will supply to wholesalers. And so wholesalers will be distributing to, offline travel agents or just a group tour tour groups and such. So these are mainly for offline distribution, but these actually get supplied to non-contracted OTAs. So that's one way actually OTAs get more supply than just direct contracting with hotels. And then on top of that, actually, OTAs also share inventory with different OTAs. So for example, Booking Holdings has multiple different OTAs under their umbrella. There's Priceline, there's Agoda, there's Booking.com. And the thing is, we all share inventory. And another important kind of thing that's kind of relevant to today's kind of setting is also the fact that we get supply from other kind of OTAs, not just under our umbrella. But for example, in the example of Korea, Booking Holdings has made a big investment in a Korean OTA called Yanolja. And what's unique with Yanolja is that in Korea, we have these things called Daeus hotels. So Daeus hotel is actually a politically correct term for what's actually more widely known as love hotels. So what you do is you kind of book a hotel for a few hours a day for whatever purposes you want it for. But these things are all kind of like mom and pop motels. So it's very difficult unless like a very local player to have these inventories. So what's happened is Booking Holdings has made a huge investment in this company in Korea, and now they have all of Booking Holdings supply, and Booking Holdings now have all of Yanoja's supply. And that's one example. And then the kind of the third example, so what I covered is now, so the wholesalers giving inventory to OTAs, and OTAs sharing inventory with each other. And the kind of the more complex, the third example is these inventories now getting forward distributed back to the mom and pop tour travel agencies. So it's a very, very complex landscape, actually. It's not just hotels directly contracting with OTAs, but a lot of kind of forward distribution going on. And the reason why it's becoming so complex is because when you think about the OTA business, like what are the dial movers? When you think about the dial movers, is it your brand recognition? Or is it how pretty your website is? Is it how much marketing activities you do? But when you think about these dial movers, actually the biggest dial mover is, do you have access to unique prices? Do you have access to unique availability? So it's really ultimately comes down to pricing and availability. Do you have the best prices? Do you have the best availability? And how do you ensure that is by kind of getting access to these aggregated supply sources, not just directly contracting. And that's why it's become so complex. And so what this means is actually, if you go into a website like Ctrip, or trip.com is the international version of Ctrip. Ctrip's a business, and you look into a hotel and you book, you try to book and look at all of the rates. Chances are all of these different rates are coming from different people. And Ctrip is actually really notorious for doing this, because they not only kind of utilize these aggregated supply sources, but they also have a supplier portal where they bring in the kind of smaller suppliers. Even if you're a very small mom and pop travel agency, if you have access to unique supply, you can utilize their platform and start distributing it through Ctrip. So chances are Ctrip doesn't own that contract. And another kind of example where this comes into play is now OTAs. So there's kind of a distinction between the online travel agency business, and there's another kind of type of business called meta search engines. So meta search engines are businesses like TripAdvisor, Kayak, maybe Skyscanner is probably also a meta search engine. So what they do is they kind of aggregate all of these OTA rates under one bucket. But when you think about like what I just mentioned about how OTAs are kind of augmenting their supply, they're actually turning into a meta search engine type business themselves. And the reverse is actually the same, where meta search engines like Kayak, or even like Google Hotel Ads, they'll start contracting directly with hotels. But these cases are far kind of far in between, few and far in between, because it's very labor intensive process to actually make these contracts directly with hotels. So the reverse case is a lot more kind of a widespread, where you kind of get these aggregated inventories. So I think that's something that's kind of interesting in the OTA business. So that's something I wanted to share. Does anybody have any questions or any comments before I move on to the next topic?
Let me check the chat.
Oh,
So,
if not, then I guess we can move on to the next one.
global the chains.
I had a question. You mentioned something that caught my attention. You said that they're turning into their own meta search engines,
Yes.
right? Will that change the whole ecosystem of sorts then? Because it seems that they're seeing something that might transform this whole model. Maybe your input. I heard that, and I kind of saw that they saw something that was interesting, that they're transforming the mechanism itself. Your thoughts
Well,
on this
so
would be appreciated.
The meta search engine business is very interesting because more and more it's kind of Google is taking over the entire meta search engine side of the business. So actually Google is becoming such a huge powerhouse in the meta search engine space that I don't think even OTA is becoming into a kind of a meta search engine type of business model is not going to be able to compete with Google, and the OTAs are still going to be have to rely heavily on Google's itself. So it's interesting, but I don't think it'll kind of take over the entire business of meta search engines. And another thing to think about is the way meta search engines make money versus OTAs making money. Is OTAs, the traditional way of making money is by taking a cut of the hotel sales as commission. But meta search engines, so that's when you get a hotel booked, and then once the booking is confirmed, then you'll get a cut of that. But meta search engines, how they make money is through either um, uh, cost per acquisition model or a cost per click model. So it's an cost per click model is also very prevalent, which is not the case for OTAs, because OTAs only when you're booked is when you make the money. So there are some fundamental differences that I don't think it'll kind of take over ultimately.
Thank you very much. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. El Tarabishi, for your question. We can go back to the slide and moving on to the next topic, global hotel chains and OTA strategy. So this was the question. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just mentioned during the supply kind of landscape, how it's becoming very, very complex. And what makes it even more complex is when these global hotel chains come into play. And what makes it interesting is the power dynamic. And the power dynamic is a love-hate relationship. And the reason why it's a love-hate relationship is because OTAs have a lot of power, but so do the global hotel chains. Because global hotel chains, in and of itself, they have their own scale. What that means is they're able to distribute on their own. So there's a whole lot of people out there, especially in America, who have, the Hilton app on their phone, the Marriott app on their phone, and they're diehard fans of these loyalty programs, and they'll go directly and book with those hotels. So these big hotel brands, they have their own distributing power. And another thing is one side of the OTA business that OTAs actually offer to the suppliers is the marketing spend. So the OTAs will also kind of spend the money on bidding with meta search engines and also bidding for PPC on Google. But that's actually hotel chains, they have scale. They can do it themselves and they can do it intelligently because they have scale. But however, they can't just completely neglect the OTAs because OTAs do offer some benefits that the hotel chains can't access themselves. So the first thing would be access to a customer base that they wouldn't have been able to access previously. So this would have been experiences like in the pre-pandemic world. Let's imagine a hotel in the US, and they want to get more Chinese customers. They then what do they do? Chinese people, they only use Ctrip. If you don't have access to Ctrip, the Chinese customers are never going to book your hotel. So that it's very important that you have access to Ctrip. And then in the Southeast Asian market, it's Agoda. You need access to Agoda, and there are many different kind of localized OTAs that local people are used to utilizing. So you need that access to get access to those unique customer segments that you wouldn't be able to access on your own. And the second way OTAs add value to big hotel chains is by offering opaque distribution channels. And when I talk about opaque distribution channels, there are actually two different examples of this. So the first example is packages. So this is what Expedia is very well known for. So Expedia is very well known for their bundled products where you book a hotel together with your flights and you only see the lump sum price when you book, but you don't see the isolated prices of the hotel and the flights. What that helps the hotel to do is kind of when they want to get rid of their last minute inventory and slash prices, when you think about it, the downside of doing that is they lose their price integrity. What that means is I want to get rid of my last minute inventory. I'm going to slice my prices, and then once that price is exposed, all of your other customers are going to want access to that price. And when you think about the hotel business, there's many different business segments outside of OTAs. You're going to have your business travelers, you're going to have your group travelers, and they're going to want those very low prices. So you don't want to hurt your price integrity, but you do want to get rid of your last minute inventory. And that's how you utilize the package rates by kind of obscuring your price and bundling it like that. And the second way we kind of do opaque distribution is through literally opaque products. And this is what Priceline and Hotwire is known for. So when you go to Priceline, what you'll have is you'll be able to book a hotel without knowing what you're booking. You'll get the price and you'll get some basic details, but you wouldn't know what hotel you're booking until you actually confirm the booking. So by doing that, again, you're not hurting your price integrity, but you're able to slice prices and get rid of your last minute inventory. And when you think about going back to the global hotel chains point of view, they're not able to do that obviously directly. Like, can you imagine Marriott.com doing it on their own? It's just literally doesn't make sense. So you need to rely on OTA to do these sort of distributions. So now kind of to sum things up. So global hotel chains have their own power, but they do have to rely on OTA. So it's at the end of the day, it's a balancing act, and the name of the game is optimization. So there are a few different strategies that global hotel chains take in order to optimize it effectively. So the first thing that they do is when you think about OTA, so I just mentioned OTA's business model is taking commission on a portion of your booking, and that commission rate can go anywhere up to 20%. So it's very, very costly for these global hotel chains. So when you distribute it directly through your own website, the cost component is probably very, very small. But when you distribute it through an OTA, it can go up to 20%. So then how do you need to maximize people booking directly? So how they do it is by kind of differentiating the offer for what we call brand.com. So they're Marriott.com, Hilton.coms. So how they do it is, first of all, policing all of the rates outside. So they do a lot of policing whenever an OTA is caught kind of discounting, then they'll get threats. It's not pretty. And they also offer kind of unique values proposition on their direct website, like loyalty points. So that's the strategy number one. And the strategy number two is also kind of making sure that you're not distributing to OTAs more than you have to. So a few years ago, I remember I read, I was following the earnings call for Marriott, and they mentioned they actually have an automated yield control system. So I don't really know the details of it, but they have a system where they can control how much they distribute to OTAs and how much they distribute to other channels. So that's the second way that they strategize around it. And the third way is the cost. I said it can go anywhere up to 20%. But they ruthlessly negotiate this commission. So normally for these global hotel chains, it'll be a much smaller percentage than 20%. So these are kind of the three strategies they take around how they manage this love-hate relationship with OTAs.
Mhm. Great. So we are moving on to the next topic, experimentation in business settings and utilizing data for strategy building.
Yes, so I wanted to talk about data a little bit because I think when you think about kind of the tourism business, there's the when you think, and then OTAs, the core distinction is data, because we have so much traffic coming in day in and day out, and traffic means data, and so there's no lack of data. And previous to my career in the OTA space, I used to work with a lot of different hotels, and it's kind of the difference is night and day how much data access to data you have in the OTA space. But when I think about data, one thing that also kind of needs to be mentioned is the use of experiments, not just data, because there's, everybody talks about big data and the importance of data and how data can be a crucial asset to your business and all of that. But there are also downfalls of data when you're trying to utilize it for business decision making. And the downfall of that is, number one, it's very difficult to prove causal relationship. Just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one thing caused the other thing. So that's the first difficulty. And what I also realized while working in the OTA space is that it's so easy to lie with data. It's you just need to kind of filter it differently. You just need to change the date range a little bit differently, and it's also very difficult. They're very easy to make mistakes because a lot of the times these data will be very nuanced. So if you just look at the data itself, you'll think, okay, this is how the data works. But in actuality, it's human beings setting up how the data gets collected and the manner of how things are done. So unless you know the nuance of how things are set up, it's so easy to make these mistakes. So when it comes to business decision making, data is not everything. In Agoda, my current company, what we do is we utilize experiments ruthlessly. Every decision we make, any kind of decision that takes resources, everything needs to be first proven by experimentation. So let me give you an example of what I'm showing on this slide here. So it's kind of a hierarchy of how you make business decisions and what sources of evidence you take to make that decision. So to give you an example, I used to work with the Vietnam market a lot. And in the Vietnam market, so one of the projects that I worked on is implementing this alternative payment method on our website. So on our website, traditionally, we only had credit card as a payment method. And then we decided to implement an e-wallet on our website. So how did that business decision come to be? So it started as a fairy tale. So in the beginning, I would make business trips to Vietnam, and I would hear things, in Vietnam, people love using cash. And in Vietnam, people don't, the banking penetration is low. Like, these are articles that I would read. And so these are just stories. And then I think, okay, then should we implement a new wallet solution? Then you can look into data, right? So how we utilize data is by looking at what we call the payment drop-off rates. So the payment drop-off rate is the percentage of people who confirm their bookings. So people who go all the way through the booking funnel, but a lot of people drop off, but then there are a portion that confirm their bookings. So when we look at the global average of that payment drop-off rate and compare that to Vietnamese domestic customers, it's a huge gap. And that's how you utilize data to say, okay, there's a huge gap, and it's probably the value is this much if we implement it. You can kind of extrapolate utilizing that data, but that's not where we end. Once we decide, okay, it seems like there's good business value, and we put a dollar value, the potential dollar value to implementing the payment solution, what we do is we come up with what we call an MVP, a minimum viable product. How can we execute this without actually putting in all of the effort that goes into it and then test it out. So what we'll do is we'll come up with an MVP, and then we'll do an A/B testing where A side on the control group, we don't show this MVP, but on the B side we show this MVP, and then we test it out, and then we see what we call the uplift A versus B. And then after testing it out, if our assumptions check out, the assumptions that we made from the data analysis, then that's when we decide to move on with the actual implementation. And so we do these experiments a lot. It's not just on the website level, but it's pretty much everywhere. So on the website, obviously, if you can go to the next slide, we do a lot of these kind of what we call A/B tests. So it's kind of a front end, what we call our website. What you see, what you would see when you go into agoda.com, we call it our front end. And so we do a lot of these A/B testing, like, okay, if the button is black, or what if we change the color for the button to yellow, and then let's see what happens. These are an example of a front end test, but we also do pricing tests. So what if we discount a further 1%? And let's do it in multiple different markets. Which market responds better to this 1% extra discount? And that gives you the pricing elasticity in that market. So we're constantly doing these pricing experiments. And then we also do it with our workforce. So when we think about, like, so I said in the OTA business, we have a lot of direct contract with our hotel partners. So there are a whole bunch of hundreds of people on the ground making these contracts and then ensuring that we have the best availability and the best pricing. And so, like, there are many different ways how we can go about it. So there are many different hypotheses around what if this person approaches this hotel this way versus that way. So we also do testings around the kind of the sales approach of things as well. So there's many different experiments going on constantly, and that's one thing that's very exciting and interesting about the OTA business.
Yes, the art of bargain. Dr. El Taravishi just commented in the chat. Right, before we are moving on to the next next section, I have a quick question, Jian.
Yes.
So I know some of the OTA companies, I think is one of the Booking Holdings subsidiaries. They're letting their engineers to experiment, to test A/B, to experiment A/B testing for the features using their original MVPs, and the company's headquarters leadership is providing huge amount of quite high level of empowerment to their engineers to let them test whenever they want. And Facebook is quite well known for this type of management style. So can you share anything related to this type of empowerment to let the engineers to run these experiments based on their own decision without reporting to their mid-level managers or to the executives?
Well, I can tell you from my own experience. So my team actually is my team does a lot of experiments. So we're kind of the supply strategy, what we call the supply strategy arm. And so kind of when we think about the supply, because it's such a huge kind of a very complex landscape. So it's a huge organization of people looking after the supply of OTAs. So there's one team that does kind of the day-to-day, what we call market managers, engaging the hotels. There's a team that does long tail engagement, reactive engagement. So anyways, we have like 5 different teams that do supply, and then our team is kind of the strategy arm of it. And what we do is when we come up with these different strategies, we ultimately need to prove it by experimentation. And so I feel like it's almost like a double-edged sword, where yes, you are free to experiment with anything you want, but you better prove something, otherwise you're not going to do anything. It's kind of like, yes, testing, everybody can test, but when it comes to implementation, you better bring some good results.
Great, good to know. Thank you for sharing. All right, so we can move on to the next section for today's webinar Q&A. Any questions from the floor? Jihyun will be happy to take your questions, answer your
So
questions.
yes, thank you. This is really exciting. This reminds me of like you're in the wild, wild west. You know what I mean? It's. I think it's. I just got excited listening to about all the things that you're doing because everything is experimentation, but results speak for themselves, right? And and it's a complicated science, from what I understand. It is not as easy as you think it is because everything is mathematics, but a lot. I feel some of it is also gut feel, right? It's like you have a hunch, or so. How do you balance this, Johan? How do you balance this combination of science and art? You know, combination together. You know, maybe you can share a story saying it went against every intuition we had, or every fact, or every logic we had, but it worked. Can you give us a story or something like this? Because
I have
it's fast.
actually, I have a couple of examples that come to mind. So the first example is a very recent one. So we wanted to do an experimentation around how we deal with chains, and I can't get into all of the details of what we wanted to do. But I can tell you what we wanted to do is we wanted to test around hotel chains. So then it's one approach. Then how do you test it? So the most ideal option is cutting the chains into half. So let's cut Marriott into half, Hilton into half, into comparable sets. But because of the way decisions are made at the hotel chains, it's very centralized. So what touches one part of the chain will eventually touch the other part of the chain. So then cutting the chains into half is not an option. The second option is now comparing a set of chains versus a set of chains, but that's also not an option because the chain itself, they're all so unique. If we do a set of chains versus a set of chains, one chain could become like a confounding variable, where because of the uniqueness of this chain, all of a sudden the bookings go up or booking goes down, and because of it's very dependent on one chain. So that's also not an option. So then our last option is doing maybe a pre-post test, which is like, let's implement it first and see what happens. But now is the worst time to do a pre-post test because of COVID. You don't know where bookings are going to go. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is not everything is testable. So in this instance, like ultimately, there needs to be an executive decision making, and it's almost kind of like you need to also utilize your hunch and then ultimately just make a call. So not everything you can test out. So that's one example that comes to mind. And a second example that comes to mind is a recent one. Was I don't know how much I can share, but this was something that everybody thought if we do this, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna bring us so much growth. But once we test it out, there's nothing happening. And it was I can only share that it was something around cancellation policy. And people thought, okay, cancellation policy is so important during the COVID period because everybody wants flexible bookings. And then if we do something with cancellation, it'll go off the charts. Nothing happens. Some things unless you test, you wouldn't know. I think you're muted.
I encourage everybody. I see some usual suspects here, Pierre and so on. So write your questions here. But let me ask a question because I am not an expert in this. Do you believe? I've always wondered about this whole business here. How are the margins? Are the margins high or low? You know, I'm always curious about the margins. Are we talking in other industries? You were talking about. I know this because from personal experience, they're saying these booking agents, their margins are about 2%. That's what I heard they say. But this is a different world. This is online. This is, are the margins more or less, or and how is the future going to play out? Because I'm sorry, but yesterday I saw a commercial in which I thought was very interesting is Airbnb. I don't know where they fall in, but they were all focusing on local travel. You know, so two questions, but I leave it to you to pick which one you like.
I didn't actually quite get the second one. So the local travel piece was
Yes, so Airbnb now is promoting local tourism, which is basically you're in your house and you're in a 50-mile radius where you can go book a ranch somewhere or go outside the city and book a house on a lake house or something like that, you know, and that's kind of a different model itself for
Yes.
hotels as well.
Yes. So to answer your first question, the answer is it depends. It depends on which industry you're comparing it to. But I shared, so the commission percentage can go anywhere up to 20%. But then it's not all entirely margin, right? Because we do discounting. And when we do discounting, what we do is we eat into our own margin, so we can offer our customers with the best pricing. So we do eat into our own margin. But another thing that is interesting is it's very asset light because we don't own any of the hotels, right? I mean, it's labor intensive, but in terms of owning assets, it's very light. So I hope that kind of answers the first question. And then in terms of local travel, we've definitely seen a lot of that. Like all of our bookings, we used to have a big portion of our bookings used to be international, and now it's almost 100% domestic. So a lot of the initiatives that came out last year and this year are around local travel, and we have a program called Go Local. So it's asking for kind of additional discounts for local travelers from the hotels. So this is the type of discount that where we don't eat into our margin, but the suppliers already give us a discounted price, and in return we give them increased marketing. So a lot of these are happening right now.
Yeah. So Jihan, I'm going to ask you one question because I was reading the Wall Street Journal and it said that there was local investors buying a group of hotels that were in bankrupt, that were buying them for almost $600 million. They went in and bought 600, right? But so take that scenario. There's other scenario where there's this phenomenon called SPACs, which is basically open checks, right? You go in and right. So I'm combining both. I think somehow somebody will say, why don't we get one of OTAs and buy a whole bunch of hotels, right? And create a closed loop where we can control both the system of purchasing rooms and stuff, but also the hardware, also the building, the hotels themselves. Is this the future?
Interestingly, we've tried that. Ultimately, the thing is, it's the competencies don't match. It's not your core competency. Real estate is a very different business versus OTAs. And when you think about the hotel business, your bookings is not 100% coming from OTAs. Like in the US, when you look at some researches, it says like OTA business accounts for maybe 10 to 15% of the bookings for an average hotel in the US. That means like 85% of your bookings are coming from business travelers, groups. And so if as an OTA, you try to acquire a bunch of hotels and create that closed loop, you're going to have to create 100% OTA business or try to learn a different business segment that you're not used to doing. And that's already creating kind of, that's not your competency. So ultimately, there's a little bit of a problem. Also, competition is a good thing. And when you try to do this sort of exclusive distribution, it probably, you become completely exclusive, but it's like you don't get that exposure from the other OTAs, your competitors, and you want that exposure. So it's yeah, we tried it and it didn't work out.
So okay, this is question to you now. I am so impressed with your knowledge and foresight and experience. You're just exceptional, absolutely exceptional. I think people will steal you and elevate you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how long have you been doing this, and what's next in your career path in this industry? Because we want to focus on you here because I am just impressed with your knowledge here. Right, and if I was working for a company, I'll bring you in. I'm like, okay, here's the keys to the place. Just run it. So tell us what you're planning.
Oh, well, what an interesting question. I'm not sure if I should. Well, so, uh, okay. To be quite honest, I don't know if I should share this. I'm planning a departure from the industry for a little bit to explore a different function, and so that's to come. But yeah, my love for the travel agency, travel business has always been the driving force in my career. And so it's a kind of with a sad heart that I leave this industry. But I would definitely love to come back to it because it's the industry where I spent all of my kind of career on since I graduated undergrad, and even undergrad I was studying travel management. So
Yeah.
um,
So you're taking a break. You're kind of refreshing, taking a break, and then looking at other opportunities and maybe coming back. You have institutional knowledge and what I call tacit knowledge, Jian. This is worth of gold, in my opinion.
I think so too. Now you're making me regret my decision.
No, I think you should take a break, but go refresh. But you have what I call tacit knowledge, and this is worth gold. People are always going to say she knows things that nobody even knows. You know, these experimentations don't happen naturally. These take time to understand. So, and so I leave it. I give it back to Professor Jung Hu to kind of wrap up things up.
If there's a question from the floor, our MTA director, Eisenhower Chair, Dr. Chevet Tossen asked the question, what is the main reason for you to leave the travel industry? That's kind of tough question, but if you can share at some level, that'll be great.
Well, ultimately, I guess that I wanted to always learn about different things. Like throughout my career in the travel business, I've always been kind of jumping from one thing to another. In my earlier career in the hotel business, I was doing kind of hotel openings and sales, and then I got my MBA, and then I got into data, and then I got into strategy. And so the next phase that will be a different function yet again. Just to share a little bit, I'm getting into supply chain management, which is a completely different thing yet again. So just trying different things and trying to expand my horizons and do unconventional things, I guess, is my driving force.
And I have Dr. Sivat here. So, Jung-Gu, why don't you introduce Dr. Sivat, and let maybe Dr. Sivat can give us some comments?
Everyone, please meet Dr. Chevet Tossen. He's the director of the GW Master of Tourism Administration program. He's also Eisenhower Chair for our program. And Chevet, Dr. Tossen, would you like to say hello to our audience and our speaker?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Dr. Su and the Hong. I don't know how I can pronounce your name. Hong is okay?
It's Jihan.
Jiang. Yeah, Jiang. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy, let's say, to virtually meet you. And it is really great discussion and very interesting. Let me introduce me a bit more. And as Dr. Su said, I am the Eisenhower Chair and the Professor of Tourism Studies and Management at George Washington University School of Business. I am also director of the Master in Tourism Administration program, which has around 50 years history, educational history. So I'm very happy to see this engaging and very inspiring discussion. I would like to thank you, both Ayman and Dr. Su, for organizing this great meeting. I hope we can, in the future, I hope we can jointly organize more this kind of event. Korean community is really very important, very special around the world. I worked previously. I worked in Macau, and I have 4 or 5 Korean colleagues over there, and the Korean people in general is really very, how can I say, have very diverse view and a very different approach to life. Therefore, the advanced technology, particularly the Samsung and the let's say in the car industry, automobile industry, you are doing very well. Thank you. I will have more questions throughout your discussion.
Great, thank you very much. I want to introduce Jung-Gu, the co-founder of KMI, Professor Kishan Kim, if he's available. I promoted him here. Kishan, if you're available, why don't you say hi? If not, I put you on the spot here. But Johan, you're not really going far away from that. You're going to supply chain, which is a nice pivot. But you know, if I was a betting man, I'd say you would come back. So, but Jungwoo, let's go continue with you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we lost a great talent. The whole travel industry lost a great talent, Jihan. Right. Thank you, Jihan. Ayman and Kyle, do we have some time to talk about some more questions? Can we go on? Or...
We can keep going, but we have reached the end of the session, but there's no rule saying we have to stop.
Yes, and let me ask one question. Maybe Jungwoo, I'm going to moderate this, and then while we have you here, and we're very lucky to have Sivat here as well, is I'm going to go around and I'm going to put you all in the spot. But now I think things are opening up. In some countries, things are not opening up; they're closing down here. But for the overall, we think there's optimism or things are opening up. I heard that the University of Chicago is going to go back fully 100% on campus in the fall. I just got an email from my kids' soccer team that they're going to start soccer sessions next month. You know, so things are opening up. So let me start with you, Johan. What is your prognosis about the whole industry moving forward? And what is your scientific opinion, but also your gut feel about where this is going? Are we going to come back very fast, slow? Is it going to boom? What's your thinking?
Well, my very unscientific view is that there's probably going to be, of course, it's going to recover. And if I had to bet, I think there's going to be a period where people are going to go on what they say revenge travel, and they just travel like they've never traveled before because they're now free, and that's also because I kind of depart the industry with a little bit of sadness because that rebound is going to come, and that's going to come with a lot of bonuses. But I think ultimately there is going to be a rebound, and it'll come back stronger. Is my opinion? Or
yeah, no, very good. Professor Su, what do you think?
Based on the data and the experts' opinions from the UNWTO and McKinsey report and another report from the SCIFT, the majority of experts share their views on the travel return starting from the third quarter, Q3 in 2021. And my gut feeling, you know, I'm feeling that I feel the same way with those experts' opinion. So Q3 2021 will be our restarting point from the travel industry's perspective.
Very good. And Dr. Sivat?
Yeah, as Dr. Su, let's say, explained, many experts around the world, according to scientific reports, and they say that towards the end of 2021, the recovery will progress a lot. But before, let's say, before 2022, for the full recovery will not take place, particularly in terms of business travel. Business travel will not, when we, of course, while I am saying this, I'm comparing 2019. I mean, that's the base year. That's the, let's say, real year. You know, 2020 and 2021 is not the year, you know, we can compare the data because it's not reliable, it's not valid because these years are not normal years. So in brief, in the travel and tourism industry, recovery, let's say 80% of the tourism industry recover towards the end of 2021. But the business industry recovery will be slower compared to the, let's say, leisure industry. On the other hand, domestic tourism is getting, you know, recovering faster, and the people, they tend to travel to the place where they can drive rather than fly. That is the new tendency in having holiday, and I think this will, this new trend will change many things in the travel industry. And also now people tend to travel, or people would like to holiday in a place where not many people there. In the past, people visit, like Madrid, Amsterdam, popular tourism destination, what we call over tourism. But now people tend to visit, not crowded area, not popular tourism destination. The positive side of this will contribute to regional development in a better way. Undeveloped, unpopular tourism destination will get popular, and they will get benefit from tourism, particularly rural tourism, and the agritourism, ecotourism areas will get more popular, because psychologically people believe that these places are, in terms of fresh air, blah blah, and also people believe that these places are safer in terms of COVID-19. So yeah, I think on 17th of April we will discuss. We have a GW Tourism and Tourism Industry think tank. We invited 6 good industry leaders, so they will meet our students, and already registration full in that think tank session. We only accepted only 50 students from GW School of Business. So we will discuss how the COVID-19 is changing the service production of tourism industry. For example, one hotel general manager of Hilton Maslak Hotel from Istanbul will join us, and he will talk about how the services of Hilton chain is, how can I say, rescheduling their room services, their hotel services due to the COVID-19. But we are hopeful. The good news, Ayman, for tourism industry is that people like saving money. People save their desire for travel. Once let's say the COVID-19 threat is run away, and then people will travel like a crazy. They miss, their relatives. They miss. They would like to establish their network, refresh it. So they will, into it. That is my as an expert. Let's say I feel that I am an expert. I'm a professor in tourism studies and tourism management, and had a lot of publication in this area. I strongly believe that tourism industry in 2023 will be the fastest growing industry in the world. This is my claim.
Thank you very much. John, I learned a new word called revenge travel. So I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna tell everybody I'm one of those revenge travelers, right? When things are open up, and
Yes.
and I know Pierre. So travel with a purpose. Yes, revenge. That's my purpose. Revenge.
Yeah, revenge. Yeah.
So with that, from a management side, I know that the airline stocks are below valued. United Airlines, Delta are way below. So these are great investment opportunities if you want to buy some stock. I know Marriott is low as well. So, and the Royal Caribbean are great stocks because they're really undervalued. And I think it's a good time to invest in stocks of those companies, the airline and the industry. Jungwoo, I'm going to ask you to close it for us as you are the chair. So I want to thank you for your
Amen. Sorry, you did. You underlined an excellent point. Like the health industry before COVID-19, some smart guys around the world, they detected that the COVID will last longer, so they invest in health industry, so they gain a lot. Now the hardest hit industry is travel and tourism, but the fastest growing industry will be the tourism industry. So it is, I think, the just right time to buy, to make investment in travel and tourism industry.
Thank you. Jungwoo?
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you, Shubat, Dr. Dustin. Great tips at the end about the investment. It's time for you to invest in the travel industry. Okay, people, please consider. And Jihyun, thank you very much for your time and all the knowledge that you have and shared with us. Thank you, all the audience. There'll be many upcoming webinars through KMI initiatives. I will be happy to meet you again in the following KMI webinars. And if you want to connect with us, please visit our website, kmigwsb.org. You can find Jihan's contact and LinkedIn information at our first page of our website too. Okay, thank you very much. Let me wrap it up, and I'll see you guys in the next webinar. Thank you very much. Have a great one. Thank you, Jihan.